My name is Richard Halpin. I'm 67 years old, and on what should have been the proudest night of my life, my own son-in-law stood up in front of everyone I'd ever worked with, everyone I'd ever trusted, everyone I'd ever called a friend, and he destroyed me. Right there, in public, with a smile on his face. It was supposed to be my retirement celebration. 40 years. 40 years of building Halpin Engineering from absolutely nothing. 40 years of 16-hour days, of missed birthdays, of sacrifices that left scars I'll carry to my grave. This was my night, my moment. The night where all of that pain was supposed to mean something. But right there in the middle of the ballroom, surrounded by 200 people, my son-in-law Ethan raised his champagne glass, and with the coldest smile I've ever seen, he said, "Give me your company shares, Richard. Give them to me now, or watch your daughter walk out of your life forever." Room went silent, dead silent. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. I looked at my daughter, my only child, the girl I raised alone after her mother died, the girl I gave everything to. She was standing right beside him, and she turned away. She turned her back on me, her own father, in front of everyone. Greedy old man, Ethan spat, his voice dripping with contempt. Still clinging to power even when you're too old to hold it. Humiliation burned through me like acid. I felt every eye in that room on me, judging me, pitying me, some of them probably agreeing with him. I wanted to scream, I wanted to cry. I wanted to collapse right there and let the shame swallow me whole, but I didn't. Instead, I smiled, a small, quiet smile. I lifted my own glass, looked him directly in the eyes, and said 3 words that would change everything. Activate the plan. Before we continue, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from. Because what happened next, what I'm about to tell you, is something you need to hear. It's about betrayal, it's about family, and it's about what happens when kindness gets mistaken for weakness. Let me take you back. Back to where this nightmare really began. Back to when I still believed that family meant something. 40 years ago, I was nobody. Just a 27-year-old engineer with a dream that everyone said was impossible. I started Halpin Engineering in a rented garage with $3,000 I'd saved, working nights as a janitor while I studied during the day. My wife, Catherine, God rest her soul, she worked 2 jobs to keep us afloat while I chased this crazy dream. Those first years nearly broke us. There were nights when we didn't know if we'd make rent. Nights when we ate rice and beans for the 3rd week in a row because that's all we could afford. But Catherine never complained. Not once. She'd hold my hand and say, "We're building something, Richard, something real, something that will last." And it did. Slowly, painfully, impossibly, it did. 1 contract became 2, 2 became 5, 5 became 20. Within a decade, Halpin Engineering was handling some of the biggest infrastructure projects in the state. Within 2 decades, we were national. And by the time I hit 60, we were working on projects across 3 continents, but Catherine never got to see it. She died when our daughter Emma was only 12, breast cancer. It took her in 8 months, and I watched her fade away, powerless to stop it. The last thing she said to me was, "Take care of Emma, and take care of the company. They're both your legacy now." I raised Emma alone. Every parent-teacher conference, every school play, every tear, every triumph. I tried to be both mother and father to her, even while running a company that demanded everything from me. I'm not saying I was perfect. God knows I failed her in 100 ways, but I loved her. I loved her with every broken piece of my heart. When she graduated college, she was so bright, so full of promise. She had her mother's kindness, and I'd hoped some of my determination. She wanted to be an artist, a painter. I supported her. I bought her a studio. I funded her exhibitions. I told her to chase her dreams the way I'd chased mine. And then she met Ethan Mitchell, 29 years old. Handsome, charming, well-educated, an MBA from a prestigious school. He came into our lives at a charity gala, and within 10 minutes of meeting Emma, I could see him working his magic. He knew exactly what to say, exactly how to smile, exactly when to laugh. And Emma, sweet, trusting Emma, she fell completely under his spell. They were married within a year, and I was happy for her. I really was. I thought she'd found someone who would love her the way her mother and I had loved each other, someone who would protect her, someone who would build a life with her. I welcomed him into our family with open arms. I treated him like the son I never had. When he expressed interest in the business, I brought him into the company, started him in project management, gave him mentorship, showed him the ropes. He was smart, I'll give him that. Quick learner, good with people. Within 3 years, he was a senior executive. Within 5, he was on the board of directors. I gave them everything. Everything. A house in the best neighborhood, paid in full, cars, vacations. And yes, I gave them shares in the company, 5% each, 10% total. It was my way of saying, your family, this legacy includes you. I trusted him. God help me, I trusted him completely, but somewhere along the way, something changed. Or maybe it was always there, and I was just too blind to see it. That kindness in his eyes, it started to look more like calculation. Those respectful questions about the business, they started to sound more like interrogations. That gratitude in his voice, it began to curdle into entitlement. It started small, little comments here and there. You know, Dad, you've been working so hard. Maybe it's time to think about slowing down. Or the board was wondering when you might consider succession planning. Or my personal favorite, at your age, Richard, you should be enjoying life, not stressing about quarterly reports. At my age, like 65 was ancient, like I was some doddering fool who couldn't remember his own name, but I played along, I smiled, I nodded. Because he was my son-in-law and I loved my daughter, and I wanted to believe that his concern was genuine. Then the meetings started. Meetings I wasn't invited to. I'd walk past the conference room and see Ethan huddled with other executives, and they'd stop talking when they noticed me. Documents would go missing from my desk. Emails I should have been copied on somehow excluded me. Board votes that should have been unanimous suddenly had dissenting voices, and those voices always seemed to echo Ethan's concerns. I started paying attention, really paying attention. And what I saw made my blood run cold. Ethan was building an empire within my empire. Quietly, methodically, he was turning my own people against me. He'd take younger executives to lunch, fill their heads with ideas about modernization and new leadership. He'd plant seeds of doubt. Richard built something amazing, but can he really take us into the next decade? He's from a different era. Emma, my sweet Emma, he'd turned her too. I don't think she even realized it was happening. He'd whisper in her ear at night, painting pictures of a future where they controlled everything, where they were free from her overbearing father. He made her believe that my love was actually control, that my guidance was actually manipulation. I remember the first time I overheard them talking about me. I'd come home early one day, tired, wanting to surprise them with dinner. I heard voices from the study. Emma's voice, frustrated. He's not going to just hand it over Ethan, he's too stubborn. Ethan's response, cold and clinical. He will, eventually. He's getting older, making mistakes. People are noticing, we just need to be patient. The company will be ours soon enough. I was not his, not the family's, theirs. I stood there in the hallway, hidden, listening to them plot my obsolescence. My own daughter, my own blood. And I felt something inside me crack. Not break, not yet. Just crack, like ice on a frozen lake, that first terrible fracture that warns you the whole surface is about to give way. But I didn't confront them, not then, because I needed to know how deep this went. I needed to understand exactly what I was dealing with, so I played the fool, the old man losing his edge. I started making small mistakes, deliberate ones. I'd forget names occasionally. I'd show up late to meetings once in a while. I'd ask questions about things I already knew just to see how they'd react. And I watched. God, I watched everything, and what I saw destroyed me. The betrayal wasn't just coming from Ethan. It was everywhere. Executives I'd promoted, people I'd mentored for decades, they were all falling in line behind him. Because he represented the future and I represented the past. Because ambition always trumps loyalty in the end, I started documenting everything, every suspicious email, every questionable meeting, every financial irregularity, because I knew what was coming. I could see it building like a storm on the horizon. Ethan wasn't just positioning himself to inherit the company, he was preparing to take it, by force if necessary, and that's when I met with Margaret Yates. Margaret had been my attorney for 30 years, sharp as a razor, loyal as they come, and ruthless when she needed to be. I called her on a secure line and said, Margaret, I need you to help me build a trap, and I need it to be perfect. We met in her office on a Saturday morning, just the two of us. I laid out everything I'd discovered, every betrayal, every manipulation, every piece of evidence I'd collected, and I said, they think I'm weak. They think I'm finished. They're going to make a move soon, probably at my retirement party. I want to be ready. I want to bury them. Margaret didn't try to talk me out of it. She didn't suggest reconciliation or family therapy. She just looked at me with those steel gray eyes and said, tell me exactly what you want to happen. And I did. We spent 6 months building the plan. It was elegant, surgical, and absolutely devastating. Every step carefully calculated. Every contingency accounted for. Every piece of the trap hidden in plain sight. First, we restructured the ownership. All of my active shares, 51% of the company, were quietly transferred into a private holding trust. Not in my name, in Catherine's name. my late wife's estate, which I controlled as the sole executor. It was perfectly legal, ironclad, and completely invisible on the corporate books as far as operational control was concerned. Then we transferred the operational control, the voting rights for those shares, to someone Ethan had completely overlooked. Jennifer Park, 34 years old, a brilliant operations manager who'd been with the company for 8 years. Ethan had dismissed her as just another mid-level employee, too young and too female to be a threat. He had no idea that I'd been grooming her for leadership, that she understood the company better than he ever would, and that she was absolutely loyal. We restructured Ethan's actual authority too. On paper, he still looked like a senior executive with significant shares. But in reality, his power was ceremonial. Every major decision required board approval, and the board was now controlled by people who answered to Jennifer, not to him. We documented every questionable move he'd made, the suspicious expense reports, the side deals with contractors where he was getting kickbacks, the company resources he'd been funneling into his personal investment projects. All of it, everything. We built a case that would not only destroy him professionally, but could potentially land him in prison if he pushed too hard, and we waited. Because I knew he'd make his move. I knew his arrogance wouldn't let him wait any longer. He'd been patient for 5 years, but patience has limits, especially for men like him. Men who believe the world owes them everything. The retirement party was his idea, actually. He suggested it to the board, framing it as a wonderful way to honor my legacy. The board loved it, of course. They thought it was respectful, generous. They had no idea it was actually Ethan setting the stage for his coronation. The planning took months. The venue, the guest list, the speeches. Emma threw herself into it, thinking she was doing something beautiful for her father. And maybe part of her was. Maybe part of her still loved me underneath all of Ethan's poison. I wanted to believe that. I needed to believe that. The night arrived. The ballroom was stunning. Crystal chandeliers, round tables with white linens, flowers everywhere, 200 people all dressed in their finest, all there supposedly to celebrate me. My colleagues, my competitors, my friends, some city officials, even a few reporters. It should have been perfect. The evening started beautifully. Dinner was served, wine flowed, people gave speeches. My CFO talked about the early days. My chief engineer talked about our biggest projects. The mayor gave a surprisingly warm tribute about the jobs we'd created. Everyone laughed at the right moments, applauded at the right times. It was perfect, too perfect. Then Ethan stood up. He wasn't scheduled to speak, but nobody stopped him. He was family after all. He walked to the microphone, glass in hand, that charming smile on his face. And I knew, right then I knew this was it. I want to say a few words about Richard, he began, his voice smooth and warm. This man has accomplished something extraordinary. He built an empire, he changed an industry. He created opportunities for thousands of people. We should all be grateful, room murmured in agreement. Emma was smiling at him, proud of her husband. But Ethan continued, and that one word changed everything. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. But I think we also need to acknowledge something that everyone here is thinking but nobody wants to say. Richard, you've done enough. You've given everything you can give. And now it's time to let go. Silence, terrible, suffocating silence. It's time for new leadership, fresh vision, a new generation to take what you built and carry it forward. And that means it's time for you to transfer control, completely, tonight. I could feel every eye in the room on me. Some people looked shocked. Others looked uncomfortable. A few looked like they'd been expecting this. So I'm asking you right now, in front of everyone who matters in this industry, give me your company shares. Transfer control to the people who will actually protect your legacy. Do it gracefully, with dignity, or, he paused, letting the threat hang in the air, or watch your daughter walk out of your life forever. Emma didn't move. She stood there, frozen, her face pale. But she didn't defend me. She didn't say a word. Come on, Dad, Ethan said, his voice dripping with false affection. Don't be a greedy old man. Don't cling to power when it's time to let go. Sign the papers and let's end this night on a happy note. Greedy old man, he said it right there, in front of everyone. The pain that shot through me in that moment, I can't even describe it. It was physical. It was in my chest, in my throat, in my bones. 40 years. 40 years of my life reduced to greed. My love for my daughter dismissed as control. My legacy treated like a prize to be seized. I wanted to die right there, just collapse and let it be over. Let him have it all. What did it matter anymore? But then I thought about Catherine. I thought about those early days in the garage. I thought about every sacrifice, every late night, every choice that had led to this moment. And I thought about what Margaret had said to me months ago. Greed isn't wanting to keep what you built, Richard. Greed is wanting to take what someone else built and pretending you deserve it. So I stood up. Slowly, my hands were shaking, but I stood. The room was absolutely silent. 200 people all waiting to see if the old man would finally break. I picked up my champagne glass. I looked at Ethan, really looked at him, and I saw him for what he truly was. Not family, not even human, really. Just a predator who'd been patient enough to wait for the right moment to strike. And I smiled, not a big smile, just a small, quiet one. And I raised my glass. "Activate the plan," I said, just those 3 words. Ethan's face went confused, then annoyed. What plan? Richard, stop being dramatic and just give me the share." But I'd already turned away. I nodded to Jennifer, who was sitting in the back. She nodded back and stepped out of the ballroom, phone already in her hand. I looked at Margaret, who was at a table near the bar. She smiled, a thin, predatory smile, and raised her own glass to me. And then I walked out. Just left. Left my own retirement party. Left my daughter standing there, confused and hurt. Left Ethan at the microphone, sputtering about disrespect and pride. I didn't care anymore. The trap was set. All I had to do was wait for it to snap shut. That walk to my car was the longest of my life. Every step felt like I was walking away from everything. My company, my daughter, my entire life. But I'd made my choice. Some betrayals can't be forgiven. Some lines can't be uncrossed. I drove home in silence, poured myself a whiskey, sat in the dark, and waited. The next morning my phone exploded with messages. From board members, executives, colleagues, even a few reporters who'd been at the party. Everyone wanted to know what had happened, what activate the plan meant, whether I was okay. I didn't answer any of them. I just waited. Emma called. I let it go to voicemail. She called again. Voicemail, again, voicemail. On the 4th call, I finally answered. "Dad. Dad, what the hell happened last night? Ethan is furious. People are confused. What plan? What are you talking about?" Her voice was frantic, but I heard something else underneath. Fear. She knew something was wrong. She just didn't know what yet. "Emma," I said, my voice calm, dead calm, "you made your choice last night. You stood with him. You turned your back on me in front of everyone I know. So now you get to live with that choice." "Dad, I didn't turn my back on you. I was just trying to obey my husband. I couldn't stop him." "You could have," I said. "You could have defended your father. You could have told him to stop. You could have walked over and stood by my side. You didn't, so now you don't get to call me and pretend you're confused about what's happening." "What is happening?" she whispered. "Justice," I said, and I hung up. That was Saturday morning. By Monday morning, the trap had sprung completely. Ethan woke up confident that day. I know because Margaret had people watching him. He got dressed in his best suit. He kissed Emma goodbye, told her he'd handle everything, that by the end of the day he'd officially be in control of the company. He actually believed it. After everything, he still thought he'd won. He drove to the office, parked in his executive spot, walked through the lobby like he owned it, because he thought he did. But when he reached the elevators, his access card didn't work. The little light turned red and the barrier didn't open. He tried again. Red, again, red. Security approached him. "I'm sorry, sir, but your credentials have been revoked. You're not authorized to enter the building." "Revoked? What the hell are you talking about? I'm a senior executive. I'm on the board. Let me through." "I'm sorry, sir. I'm just following orders. You'll need to speak with HR." Ethan's face went red. I wish I could have seen it in person, but the security footage Margaret sent me was almost as good. He was furious, screaming about lawsuits and wrongful termination and how he'd have everyone's jobs. Security called Jennifer. She came down personally, professional as always. "Calm, Mr. Mitchell," she said, her voice cool and measured. "I'm afraid there's been a change in organizational structure. Your position has been eliminated and your access has been revoked. You'll receive formal documentation this afternoon." "Eliminated? I'm on the board of directors. You can't just eliminate me. Where's Richard? I want to speak to Richard." "Mr. Halpin is no longer involved in day-to-day operations," Jennifer said. "I'm the new CEO, and I have something for you." She handed him an envelope. Plain white, his name typed on the front. Ethan tore it open right there in the lobby. I'd written the letter myself. Spent hours crafting every word to make sure it cut as deeply as possible. "Dear Ethan," it read, "effective immediately, you are removed from all positions within Halpin Engineering. Your board seat is revoked. Your executive title is revoked. Your access to all company resources is revoked. Your employment is terminated with cause, meaning you forfeit all severance and benefits. Furthermore, an investigation into your financial activities has revealed several serious irregularities, which have been reported to the appropriate authorities. You have 24 hours to return all company property, including your company car, laptop, phone, and access cards. Any attempt to access company facilities or systems will be considered trespassing and handled accordingly. Do not contact me. Do not contact my daughter. Do not contact anyone associated with this company. Your time here is over, but that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the second page stapled behind the letter, copies of documents, expense reports he'd falsified, contracts where he'd accepted kickbacks, financial transfers he'd made to his personal accounts, every piece of fraud he'd committed laid out in clinical detail, and at the bottom a note. Copies of this evidence have been provided to the board, the SEC, and local law enforcement. I suggest you hire an attorney. Watch the security footage of Ethan reading that letter over and over. I watched the color drain from his face. I watched his hands start to shake. I watched the exact moment he realized he'd been played, that the greedy old man had been 10 steps ahead the entire time. He looked up at Jennifer, his voice barely a whisper. How long has he been planning this? Jennifer smiled, cold and satisfied. Since the day you first called him Dad, and he saw your eyes calculating his net worth. He knew exactly what you were from the beginning. He just gave you enough rope to hang yourself. Ethan tried to push past her to force his way into the building. Security grabbed him, not roughly but firmly. They escorted him out to the street, and he stood there on the sidewalk, holding that letter, staring up at the building with his name being erased from everything. By noon, the news had spread throughout the industry. By evening, it was on the business channels. Executive ousted in corporate coup, some headlines read. Engineering firm CEO exposes son-in-law's fraud, others said. The reporters didn't have all the details yet, but they had enough. Ethan's phone started ringing. Other board positions he held called to ask questions. Banks that had given him credit based on his position, suddenly concerned. Friends and colleagues, suddenly unavailable. The house I'd given them. Technically, it was still in my name, held in a trust for Emma. But with Ethan's fraud exposed, his assets were about to be frozen. The mortgage they'd taken out against it, using his company shares as collateral, those shares were worthless now. The bank would be calling soon. The cars, company vehicles, both of them, returned by end of business. The country club membership, company benefit, terminated. Every single piece of the life they'd been living, built on my generosity and his position, all of it was gone. In one day, I'd erased 5 years of his careful planning. I'd reduced him from a corporate executive to a man facing potential criminal charges, all without raising my voice or throwing a punch. But here's the thing, and this is what kills me even now. It wasn't enough. The revenge, the justice, the satisfaction of watching him fall, none of it could fill the hole that Emma's betrayal had left in my heart. She called me that evening. I let it go to voicemail, but I listened to it. I couldn't help myself. Dad, please pick up. I don't understand what's happening. He's falling apart. He's talking about lawyers and jail and our house being taken. He said you had him fired. He said you've been planning this. Dad, please, whatever is happening, we can fix it. We're family, please. I'm sorry about the party. I'm sorry I didn't stand up for you. I was scared. I didn't know what to do, but we can fix this. Please, Dad, please call me back. I love you, love you. Those 3 words after everything still had the power to destroy me. I sat there in the dark, phone in my hand, and I cried. I cried like I hadn't cried since Catherine died. Because I knew in my bones that those words didn't mean what I wanted them to mean. She didn't love me, not really. She loved what I represented. She loved security and money and the life I'd provided. But me. The man who'd raised her, who'd sacrificed for her, who'd given her everything, I don't think she'd seen that man in years. Ethan had made sure of that. I didn't call her back. I couldn't, not yet. Maybe not ever. The next morning, the SEC investigation went public. They were looking into Ethan's activities, both at Halpin Engineering and at several other companies where he'd held board positions. The evidence I'd provided was just the beginning. Once they started digging, they found more. So much more. Within a week, 3 separate lawsuits had been filed against him, 2 from companies he'd defrauded, 1 from a business partner he'd cheated. His attorney was overwhelmed. His bank accounts were frozen pending investigation. And Emma, my poor, foolish daughter, was left trying to hold together a life that was disintegrating by the hour. She showed up at my house on a Thursday afternoon. I saw her car pull up through the window. My instinct was to not answer the door. To let her ring the bell and knock and call my name until she gave up and left. But I couldn't. She was still my daughter. Even after everything, I couldn't just shut her out completely. I opened the door. She looked terrible, dark circles under her eyes, hair unwashed, clothes wrinkled. This wasn't my Emma. This was someone I barely recognized. "Can I come in?" she asked, her voice small and broken. I stepped aside. She walked past me into the living room, the same living room where she'd played as a child, where we'd celebrated Christmases and birthdays, where Catherine had read her stories before bed. "I didn't know," she said, not even sitting down. "About the fraud, about the things he was doing, I swear to you, Dad, I didn't know." "You knew he was trying to take my company," I said. "You knew he saw me as an obstacle. You knew he was turning you against me. You knew all of that." She couldn't meet my eyes. "He said. He made it sound like you were holding on too tight, like you were controlling me, controlling us, like we'd never be free unless we took control of our own lives. By destroying mine, he said you'd retire anyway. He said we were just accelerating the inevitable. He made it sound reasonable, Dad. He made it sound like we were protecting our future, protecting our family." "I am your family," I shouted. And I hated how my voice cracked. "I'm your father, I raised you, I loved you, and you let him turn you against me for what? For money, for shares in a company I built with my bare hands. I didn't let him turn me against you," she said, but there was no conviction in her voice. I wanted him to be happy, I wanted us to be happy." "And are you?" I asked. "Are you happy now?" she started, crying, not dainty tears, but deep, body-shaking sobs. She collapsed onto the couch, and I stood there, watching her fall apart, and I felt nothing. Nothing but this cold, empty exhaustion. "Going to take everything," she said between sobs. "The house, the cars, our savings. His lawyer says he might go to prison. Prison, Dad. And I'm going to lose everything too because I'm his wife and they're investigating our joint accounts and our joint assets and I don't know what to do." "You could leave him," I said quietly. She looked up at me, shocked. "What? Leave him? Divorce him? Separate your assets from his before it all comes crashing down? Save yourself?" "I can't do that. He's my husband, for better or worse." "Tried to destroy your father," I said, my voice hard. "He manipulated you, used you, turned you into a weapon against me. And you stood there at that party and let him humiliate me in front of everyone I know. So forgive me if I don't have much sympathy for your commitment to your marriage vows." "You planned this," she said, and now there was anger in her voice. "You set him up. You trapped him. You could have just talked to us, could have worked it out, but instead you destroyed him." And there it was, the accusation I'd been waiting for. This was my fault, not his, not hers, just mine. "I gave him every chance," I said. "For 5 years I watched him plot against me. For 5 years I hoped he'd prove me wrong, that he'd show some loyalty, some integrity, but he never did. And you, Emma, you chose him over me. At every turn you chose him. So yes, I planned this. I planned it carefully and I executed it perfectly, because that's what you do when someone tries to steal everything you've built. You protect yourself. By destroying your own family, he destroyed this family the day he decided I was just an obstacle to be removed. You destroyed it the day you agreed with him." She stood up, shaking with rage or grief or both. "I came here hoping you'd help us, hoping you'd remember that I'm your daughter and that you love me. But I guess I was wrong. I guess the company is all you ever really cared about." That line, that accusation, it cut deeper than anything else she'd said. Because there was a part of me, a small, terrible part, that wondered if she was right. Had I loved the company more than her? Had I sacrificed our relationship on the altar of my ambition? But no, I'd loved her with everything I had. I'd given her everything. And she'd taken it all and let her husband use it against me. "Get out," I said quietly. "Dad," she called. "Get out of my house. You made your choice. Live with it." She stared at me for a long moment, tears streaming down her face. Then she turned and walked out. The door closed behind her with a soft click that somehow sounded louder than a slam, and I was alone. Again, just like after Catherine died. Just like all those nights I'd spent in this house, raising Emma by myself, trying to be enough for her. The weeks that followed were strange. The company was thriving under Jennifer's leadership. She was everything I'd hoped she'd be: decisive, innovative, fair. The board loved her. The employees respected her. And me. I was just a ghost, haunting the edges of something I'd built, but no longer controlled. Ethan's legal troubles deepened. The SEC brought formal charges. 2 of the companies he defrauded filed criminal complaints. His attorney was talking about plea bargains and reduced sentences. He was looking at 3 to 5 years, minimum. Emma filed for divorce 2 months after our confrontation. I found out from a mutual friend, not from her. She'd taken my advice after all, separating her assets from his before they could be seized. Smart move, cold but smart. Maybe she was more my daughter than I'd thought. The house they'd lived in, the one I'd bought for them, it went back to the bank. Emma moved into a small apartment across town, got a job at an art gallery, started rebuilding her life without either me or Ethan. She tried calling me a few times. I never answered. She sent emails. I deleted them without reading. She even sent a letter, handwritten, but I couldn't bring myself to open it. Maybe someday, maybe when the wound wasn't so fresh, But not yet. People asked me if I felt guilty, if I regretted what I'd done. They didn't understand. This wasn't about revenge. This wasn't about being vindictive or cruel. This was about justice, about protecting what I'd built from someone who saw it only as something to take. Some nights I'd sit in my study, the same study where I'd overheard Emma and Ethan plotting years ago, and I'd wonder if I'd made the right choice. If there was another way this could have ended, if I'd been too harsh, too unforgiving, but then I'd remember that moment at the party, that public humiliation, the look on Ethan's face as he called me a greedy old man, the way Emma turned away from me, and I'd know deep in my bones that I'd done exactly what needed to be done. I'd visit Catherine's grave sometimes, sit there and talk to her like she could hear me, tell her about what happened, ask her if she thought I'd done the right thing. I protected the company, I'd say, just like you asked, but I lost Emma in the process. Was it worth it? Did I do the right thing? The wind would blow through the trees, and I'd pretend it was her answer, that she understood, that she forgave me for whatever mistakes I'd made. 6 months passed, then 8, then a year. The legal proceedings against Ethan concluded. He took a plea deal, pled guilty to fraud and embezzlement. 18 months in federal prison, 3 years probation after. His career was over, his reputation destroyed, everything he'd built on lies and manipulation, gone. I felt nothing when I heard the news. No satisfaction, no vindication, nothing. Just this hollow emptiness where something used to be. The company continued to grow under Jennifer's leadership. She launched new initiatives, secured major contracts, expanded into markets I'd never considered. She was brilliant, better than I'd ever been if I'm being honest. The company didn't need me anymore. Maybe it never really had. I spent my days doing nothing of consequence. I'd wake up, have coffee, read the newspaper, maybe go for a walk. Sometimes I'd drive past the office just to look at it, to remember what it felt like when it was mine. But I never went in. The chapter was closed, and then 14 months after the retirement party, I got a letter. Not an email, not a text, but an actual letter in the mail, handwritten on nice stationery. From Emma. I almost threw it away without opening it. I'd thrown away all the others, but something stopped me this time. Maybe it was loneliness. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe I was just tired of carrying all this anger around like a stone in my chest. I opened it. "Dear Dad," it began, and just those 2 words made my hands shake. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even expect you to read this. But I need to write it anyway, because there are things I need to say, even if you never hear them. You were right about everything. About Ethan, about me, about what we were doing to you. I didn't see it at the time, or maybe I didn't want to see it, but you were right. Ethan didn't love me. I don't think he ever did. He loved what I represented, access to you, to the company, to the life he wanted but couldn't build himself. And I was so desperate to be loved, so desperate to have someone choose me after Mom died, that I let myself believe his lies. I'm not making excuses. I'm not trying to shift blame. I made my choices. I stood with him when I should have stood with you. I turned my back on you when you needed me most. And I will carry that shame for the rest of my life. The divorce is final now. I'm living alone for the first time since college, working at a gallery, painting again, trying to figure out who I am when I'm not defined by my relationship to powerful men, whether that's a husband or a father. I've been in therapy, twice a week for the past 6 months, trying to understand how I let myself become so lost, how I confused manipulation for love, control for care, how I betrayed the one person who actually loved me unconditionally. My therapist asked me to write this letter, not because she thinks you owe me forgiveness, but because she says I need to take accountability, even if it changes nothing. So here it is, Dad. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for choosing him over you. I'm sorry for letting him use me as a weapon against you. I'm sorry for not defending you at that party. I'm sorry for every conversation where I questioned your judgment instead of questioning his motives. I'm sorry for being weak and blind and selfish. I don't expect you to respond to this. I don't expect anything from you at all. You gave me everything already and I threw it away. I just needed you to know that I finally understand what I lost, and I will spend the rest of my life trying to become someone who would have been worthy of your love. I love you, Dad. I always have, even when I was too stupid to show it. Your daughter, Emma. I read that letter 3 times. Then I folded it carefully and put it in my desk drawer. And I cried, not the angry, bitter tears from before, just sad, exhausted tears for everything that had been lost, for the relationship that could have been, for the daughter I'd raised and the woman she'd become. But I didn't respond, not yet. Maybe I was still too angry. Maybe I was still too hurt, or maybe I just didn't know what to say. How do you respond to an apology for something that destroyed you? How do you forgive betrayal that deep I didn't know? So I did nothing. Another month passed, then another. The letter stayed in my drawer. I'd take it out sometimes, read it again, try to feel something other than this numb emptiness. But the anger had burned out, and all that was left was ash. It was a Tuesday afternoon when it happened. I was at home, sitting in the study, staring at nothing in particular when the doorbell rang. I almost didn't answer. I wasn't expecting anyone, and I'd gotten used to the solitude, but something made me get up, made me walk to the door, made me open it. Emma stood there. She looked different, thinner, older. Her hair was shorter, and she wasn't wearing makeup. She had a canvas bag over her shoulder and a nervous expression on her face. "No, you didn't respond to my letter," she said quickly, before I could say anything. "And I know that probably means you don't want to see me, but I was in the neighborhood and I had to try, I had to at least try. I should have closed the door, should have told her it was too late, too much had happened, too much had been broken. But I didn't. I just stood there looking at her, seeing glimpses of the little girl she used to be and the woman she'd become." "I brought something," she said, reaching into her bag. She pulled out a small canvas, maybe 12 by 16 inches, a painting. "I've been working on this for months. I needed to give it to you." She turned it around so I could see it, and my breath caught in my throat. It was Catherine, my wife, Emma's mother, not from a photograph but from memory. She was sitting in our old garden, the one behind the house we'd lived in when Emma was young, before the money and the success. She was smiling, that gentle smile that had always made everything okay, and in her lap was a little girl with pigtails, looking up at her mother with absolute trust and love. "Remember this day?" Emma said softly. "I was 6. We were planting flowers. Mom was teaching me the names of all the different colors, and you were inside working on some project, but you kept coming to the window to watch us. You thought we didn't notice, but we did. Mom would wave at you every time." I couldn't speak. My throat was too tight. The painting was beautiful, more than beautiful. It captured something essential about Catherine, something I thought had been lost to time. "I wanted you to have it," Emma said, "because I've been thinking about that day a lot lately, about how safe I felt, how loved. And I realize now that I've been chasing that feeling my entire adult life, looking for it in all the wrong places with all the wrong people, when the truth is I had it all along, with you." And I threw it away. A single tear rolled down her cheek. She didn't wipe it away. "Don't expect you to let me back into your life," she continued. "I don't expect forgiveness or reconciliation or anything else. I just wanted you to have this, to know that I remember, to know that I understand now what I lost." She held out the painting. I took it with shaking hands. Looked down at Catherine's face, at the little girl who was my daughter, at a moment of perfect happiness that felt like a lifetime ago. "Thank you," I managed to say, my voice barely a whisper. Emma nodded. She started to turn away, to walk back to her car, to leave me alone with this gift and all the complicated emotions it stirred up. "Emma," I said. She stopped, turned back, hope and fear warring in her eyes. "Would you like to come in, have some coffee?" The hope won. "I'd like that. I'd really like that." So we did. We sat in the kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd made her breakfast 1,000 times when she was growing up, and we drank coffee and we talked. Not about Ethan, not about the company, not about the betrayal. We talked about Catherine, about memories, about the garden and the flowers and all the little moments that make up a life. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet, maybe not ever, but it was something, a beginning, a crack in the wall I'd built around my heart. When she left that evening, I walked her to her car. She hugged me tentatively, like she wasn't sure if it was allowed. I hugged her back. It felt strange and familiar all at once. "Can I come back sometime?" she asked. "Maybe next week." "Maybe," I said. And then, because I needed to be honest, "I'm not ready to forget what happened, Emma. I may never be ready, but I'm willing to try. That's all I can promise." "That's enough," she said. "That's more than enough." She drove away, and I stood in the driveway, holding the painting, watching her taillights disappear into the distance. And for the first time in over a year, I felt something other than anger or emptiness. I felt the smallest, most fragile possibility of hope. The weeks that followed were tentative, careful. Emma would come by once a week, sometimes twice. We'd have coffee, talk about safe topics, avoid the landmines of our shared history. It was awkward and uncomfortable, but it was also real in a way our relationship hadn't been in years. She told me about her job at the gallery, about the artists she was working with, about her own painting, how she was finding her voice again after years of letting it be drowned out. I told her about retirement, about the strange feeling of watching the company grow without me, about learning to find meaning in a life that wasn't defined by work. We didn't talk about Ethan, not for a long time. He was serving his sentence, and she had no contact with him. That chapter of her life was closed. And I was grateful for it. But one evening, about 3 months after that first coffee, she brought it up. Need to tell you something, she said. Something I should have told you a long time ago. I braced myself. After everything, I wasn't sure I could handle another revelation. The night of your retirement party, she continued, when Ethan stood up and made that speech, I knew what he was going to do. He'd told me beforehand. He'd practiced it, and I didn't stop him. I didn't warn you. I didn't even try to talk him out of it. She was crying now, quiet tears that she didn't try to hide. I told myself I was stuck, that I had to support my husband, that you'd understand eventually. But the truth is I was a coward. I was afraid of what would happen if I chose you over him, afraid he'd leave me, afraid I'd end up alone. So I chose wrong. I chose the easy path, and I will regret it for the rest of my life. I didn't say anything for a long moment. Just sat there, processing this confirmation of what I'd always suspected. I knew, I finally said. Not for certain, but I suspected. That's why it hurt so much. Not just the betrayal, but the premeditation of it. The fact that you had a choice and you chose him. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. I know you are, I said, and I meant it. I could see the genuine remorse in her eyes, hear it in her voice. She wasn't the same person who'd stood silent at that party. Time and consequences had changed her. Can you ever forgive me? She asked. I thought about it, really thought about it. Could I, should I? What did forgiveness even mean in this context? I don't know, I said honestly. I want to. Part of me wants to just let it all go and have my daughter back. But another part of me is still so angry, still so hurt. Maybe forgiveness isn't one big moment. Maybe it's 1,000 small choices made over and over again. Can live with that, she said. If you're willing to keep trying, so am I. And we did. Week after week, month after month, we kept trying. It wasn't linear. Some days were good, easy, almost like old times. Other days were hard, when something would trigger the memories and the anger would flare up again. But we kept showing up, kept choosing each other, even when it was difficult. A year and a half after the retirement party, I attended Emma's first solo art exhibition. She'd been working toward this for months, painting pieces that explored themes of family, betrayal, forgiveness, and redemption. I'd seen some of them while they were in progress, but seeing them all together in a gallery with other people viewing and appreciating them was overwhelming. One painting in particular stopped me in my tracks. It was titled The Retirement Party. It showed a ballroom full of people, but they were all blurred, indistinct. In the center were three figures in sharp focus, an old man standing alone holding a glass. A young woman turned away, her face hidden. And a man with his mouth open, frozen mid-shout. The colors were harsh, reds and blacks and angry oranges. It was violent and painful and honest. Emma came to stand beside me. I almost didn't include this one, she said. It's too raw, too personal. But my therapist said that's exactly why I should show it, that I need to stop hiding from what happened. It's powerful, I said, and it was. It hurt to look at, but it was also cathartic somehow. Seeing that night rendered in art, seeing the pain acknowledged and externalized, it made it feel less overwhelming. Everything I've been through, everything I've done, it's made me who I am, Emma said. I can't undo the past. I can't unbecome the person who betrayed you, but I can try to be better going forward. I can create something meaningful from the wreckage. Your mother would be proud of you, I said, and I meant it. Catherine had always believed in second chances, in growth, in the possibility of redemption. If she were here, she'd see what I was starting to see, that Emma had been lost but was finding her way back. The exhibition was a success. Emma sold several pieces, got written up in the local arts magazine, even got approached by a gallery in New York about a possible showing. She was building something real, something hers, something that didn't depend on anyone else's money or influence. And me. I was slowly learning how to live without the company defining me. I started volunteering, teaching engineering concepts to high school students. Started writing a memoir about the early days of Halpin engineering. Started, tentatively, building a relationship with my daughter that wasn't about what we'd lost, but about what we could still become. It's been 3 years now since that retirement party. 3 years since I activated the plan and watched my carefully constructed trap destroy the man who tried to destroy me. 3 years of aftermath and consequences and slow, painful healing. Ethan got out of prison 6 months ago. I heard through mutual acquaintances. He's working as a middle manager at some small firm, rebuilding his life from the wreckage of his ambitions. Emma has no contact with him. As far as I know, he's never tried to reach out. Maybe he's learned his lesson. Maybe he's just smart enough to know he'd get nothing but rejection if he tried. The company is thriving. Jennifer is everything I hoped she'd be and more. She sends me quarterly reports, calls me occasionally to ask for advice, though I suspect she doesn't really need it. She's just being kind, keeping me in the loop. I appreciate it, even if it sometimes reminds me of everything I gave up, Emma, and I have dinner every week now. Sometimes at my house, sometimes at hers, sometimes at restaurants. We talk about art and politics and books and movies. We laugh sometimes. We cry occasionally. We're building something new, something that acknowledges the past but isn't trapped by it. Last month, on the anniversary of Catherine's death, Emma and I went to visit her grave together. We brought flowers like we used to when Emma was young. We sat on the grass and talked to Catherine, telling her about our lives, about how we were slowly finding our way back to each other. "Do you think she'd forgive me?" Emma asked. "For what I did?" I thought about Catherine, about her kindness, her wisdom, her unshakable belief in the goodness of people. "I think she'd tell you that forgiveness isn't something you receive, it's something you earn," I said. "And you're earning it, every day, with every choice you make to be better than you were." "You?" Emma asked, looking at me with those eyes that were so much like her mother's. "Have I earned it from you? Have you?" It's the question I've been asking myself for 3 years. The question that keeps me up at night, that follows me through my days, that colors every interaction we have. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. Not the woman who'd betrayed me, not the girl I'd raised, but the person she was now, flawed, broken in places, but trying. God, she was trying so hard to make it right. "Getting there," I said, and it was true. Maybe I wasn't all the way to forgiveness yet. Maybe I'd never be, but I was closer than I'd been, and that had to count for something. We sat there in silence for a while, just being together, being present with our grief and our hope and all the complicated emotions in between. And you know what? That's where I am now. In the in-between, not quite forgiven, not quite healed, but moving forward anyway, building something new from the ruins of what was destroyed. People ask me if I regret what I did, if I wish I'd handled it differently, if destroying Ethan was worth the cost of nearly losing Emma forever. The honest answer, I don't know. Some days I think I did exactly what needed to be done. That I protected myself, protected my legacy, taught a necessary lesson about the consequences of greed and betrayal. Other days I wonder if there was another way, if I could have been less ruthless, less cold, less willing to burn everything down to prove a point. But here's what I do know: you can't build anything meaningful on a foundation of lies. Ethan and Emma, they were building their future on the assumption that they could take what wasn't theirs, that they deserved my life's work simply because they wanted it. And I couldn't let that stand. I couldn't reward that kind of betrayal with success, so I made a choice, a hard choice, a choice that cost me nearly everything but also, paradoxically, saved me, because if I'd given in that night, if I'd let Ethan humiliate me and take my company, I would have died inside, not physically but spiritually. I would have become a ghost, haunting the edges of my own life. Instead, I fought back. I used every bit of intelligence, every resource, every connection I had to protect what was mine. And yes, it was brutal. Yes, it destroyed a man and nearly destroyed my relationship with my daughter. But it also preserved my dignity, my self-respect, my sense that I still had agency in my own life. Was it worth it? Ask me on different days and you'll get different answers. But today, sitting here, thinking about that dinner I'm having with Emma tomorrow, about the slow rebuilding of something precious that was almost lost forever, I think maybe it was. Because here's the thing about betrayal and forgiveness: they're both choices. Ethan chose to betray me. Emma chose to stand with him, and I chose to fight back. Those choices had consequences, painful consequences, but they were honest. They were real. They forced everyone involved to confront who they really were, what they really valued, what they were willing to sacrifice. And now Emma is choosing every single day to earn back what she lost. And I'm choosing every single day to let her try. And maybe that's all any of us can do: make choices, face consequences, and keep trying to be better than we were. So when people ask me if I'm the greedy old man Ethan called me that night, I smile, because I know the truth. Greed isn't wanting to keep what you built. Greed is wanting to take what someone else built and pretending you deserve it. I wasn't greedy. I was just a man protecting his life's work from people who saw it as nothing more than an opportunity. I was just a father who'd been betrayed by his own daughter and who made the hard choice to teach her a lesson she'd never forget. And you know what? She learned it. It cost us both dearly, but she learned it. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't shouting or fighting or violence. Sometimes it's preparation. It's intelligence. It's being 10 steps ahead and watching your enemies walk right into the trap you've carefully built for them. They called me greedy, but I was just protecting what I'd built. And I'd do it again, Even knowing the cost, even knowing the pain, I'd do it again, because some things are worth fighting for. Your dignity, your legacy, the truth about who you are and what you've accomplished. And maybe, just maybe, the possibility of redemption for yourself and for the people you love, even when they've hurt you more deeply than you thought possible. That's my story. That's the truth about the greedy old man and the son-in-law who tried to take everything from him. It's not a happy story, not entirely, but it's honest. And sometimes honesty is all we have. If you liked this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from. Because stories like this, they matter. They remind us that we all have choices. We all have power even when we feel powerless. And we all have the capacity to surprise people who underestimate us. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. And remember, never let guilt make you hand over your life's work to people who only see you as an opportunity. Your legacy is yours. Protect it. Fight for it. And never, ever apologize for refusing to be a victim.